Okay, time to move on. So it's Genesis and it's chapter 11, which is the Tower of Babel. So I'll do this. This part is really short. I mean, it just goes from here to here, and then we have genealogy, and then right after this, it jumps into the Abraham part, and then that continues everything with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the 12 sons and the 12 tribes, and what happens with Joseph and going down there. All of it after that is about that. So, and there are types in everything, types of Christ. So, anyway, that's the deal that's coming up. So, I'll jump in. I might turn the light on. It's, getting to be that time of year where it gets dark earlier. So, I'm going to just turn it on. And it's just going to get darker. So here we go. 11. Now the whole earth had one language and one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Then they said to one another, Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower, whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. And I'll get into the significance of all this in a bit. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, Indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language. And this is what they begin to do. Now nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore its name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. This is where we get the term babble. Oh, they're just babbling, it's just blah, 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 because that's what it sounded like to each other. One sounded that way to the other because all of a sudden they had the different languages. So that was the deal, and this was to divide them, because otherwise, they would have gotten too far too quick. For example, what we're seeing today. So I'm going to get to that. Here I have my little list. So the list for this, for the Tower of Babel, and I'll make a picture in a second, but we have some things that jumped out at me, and I'm not the first one. I mean, everybody talks about this, how the Tower of Babel is a type of the end times in its own way. We have the one world. They wanted to unite into one world, a one world government, a one world everything, and there it was. So anyway, you have then builders of brick and mortar, and this could be the starting point of masonry, which is actually originally about bricks and stones and buildings, and then you get architecture, and it goes on from there. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. Otherwise, Google that. Okay, we have building of a tower, And here we have, I've heard it, okay, it was a pyramid without a top corner. See, so it was like the capstone was missing. It's just a building. And I'm going to draw that in a minute. And they did it to reach the heavens. And there's that concept of work salvation, like they're building a stairway to heaven, that kind of thing. And you see this symbolism in a lot of these occult groups, you know, the stairway, like they think they can climb their way up there by works. And of course, that's false, but that symbolism is around a lot in those groups. So, reaching the heavens is that idea. And then another one was to avoid judgment, because they had just had a worldwide flood. So they thought to escape the next flood, which was worldwide judgment, they would build this high tower that hopefully would be higher than the waters. That was one of the plans there. And then we have the desire, so, seeking to get out of judgment. Okay, basically, you have that. And this is all going to tie in, like the one world religion, reaching the heavens through that kind of effort, avoiding judgment, thinking they can do this, that kind of thing. Then you have the desire to make a name for themselves. And that one group that I kind of referred to earlier, they kind of make a big deal about leaving a legacy, leaving a name for themselves, and thinking they can immortalize themselves through that. There's a lot about that in their religion, which is what it is. It's their occultic religion. And so that all ties in here. And also the whole concept of ego, making a name for themselves, Okay, and then we have the thing of unity. They wanted to unite into one people, one language, a one world system. So there's that. Then we have the location is in the plain of Shinar, which happens to be in the region of Babylon, which is associated with false religion all the time in the Bible. And then we have, after all that, the fact that God comes and scatters them, puts a stop to it, and that kind of relates to the whole thing about a capstone coming and crushing and pulverizing the kingdom of the world, and it's scattered like dust. They're scattered. So we have that in here as well. So, yeah, that's it for that list. Let me see, I have this list, but that's coming up in the next chapter here. I'm going to make sure I have. Oh, yeah, this is good. Okay. Right, this comes later. This stuff. Okay, I'll go through this real soon, but all right, now here, this part is just Shem's. So that's the end of the Babel. See, that was it. That's the end of the Tower of Babel. Let me make the picture here. This is what I have heard. Okay, it isn't my idea, but I've heard it had this form. Wait, make this smaller. It always wants to do that. Okay. Which looks a lot like a lot of those structures you've seen probably in those ancient ruins of different kinds and different civilizations, right? But this is the idea, and you see this the stairway image here, the missing capstone, right? You see the pyramid structure, of course, and there was supposed to be a city and a tower. So Now, apparently, this would connect like this. So you have to think of a wedding cake, I guess. But like each layer, you'd climb up from any, it's like a 3D thing, from any part you can climb up like a stairway. And then some people have said that it looked kind of like a spiral, because you'd have to start up somewhere and you could go up like this, which would make it a little bit, if you did that, it would be more, a little bit, a little bit lopsided. I've seen all kinds of pictures. I haven't looked for the thumbnail yet, but when I do, I'm going to pick out one of those for this one here. Babel thing. Okay. So, and there are all kinds of images available, but that's what they're saying. I mean, this is, flatter here, but, kind of like leaning a little bit. Okay, so that's that. Now, back to this. So anyway, that's it for the Tower of Babel. And then here we have descendants, and it's just all those details here about descendants. And that goes on till here. I'm just going to read this little part because it gets to Abraham here. So we have, this is the genealogy of Terah. Terah begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran begot Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in his native land, in Ur of the Chaldeans. Then Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. But Sarai was barren, she had no child. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's wife, and they went out with them from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan, and they came to Haran and dwelt there. So the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. So this is just a little background on the family of Abraham, which his name gets changed to, and Sarah is the new name for the wife. So anyway, but I wanted to start there for the background of that, and now we get to all this Abraham stuff. So chapter 12. Now the Lord had said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Now here we get this first promise thing, and ultimately this is, and it comes up over and over again, but the way all the nations are blessed are through his seed, which happens to be the Messiah, Jesus, okay? That's how that works out. Okay, so that's the two-way street there with blessings. I mean, him is one thing, that's one person. But anyway, it's just, you got to go by context at different times. But so Abram departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Oh, And in Genesis 12:3, that's also a messianic prophecy there. So there's that. And there's another one in verse 7. So I'm just going to mention it now, but that's coming up. Then Abram took Sarai his wife and Lot his brother's son and all their possessions that they had gathered and the people whom they had acquired in Haran. And they departed to go to the land of Canaan. So they came to the land of Canaan. Abraham passed through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh, and the Canaanites were then in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your descendants I will give this land." And there he built an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. Well, that one, it's listed. This is another list I got, but there's more in it than what they're mentioning. So, okay, we know that this is a prophecy that happened, and that will show up later on. Okay. And he moved from there to the mountain east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. So Abram journeyed, going on still toward the south. So he was heading from Chaldea, which was kind of by Iraq. I think. Anyway, he was moving south towards Canaan, which is today Israel. So he was somewhat northeast of there. So whatever is there now, I have to look at the map again. Anyway, I have some maps here I'm going to show too in a little bit. Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to dwell there. For the famine was severe in the land. And it came to pass, when he was close to entering Egypt, that he said to Sarai his wife, "Indeed I know that you are a woman of beautiful countenance. Therefore it will happen, when the Egyptians see you, that they will say, 'This is his wife,' and they will kill me, but they will let you live. Please say you are my sister, that it may be well with me for your sake, and that I may live because of you." Okay, so it was when Abram came into Egypt that the Egyptians saw the woman, that she was very beautiful. The princes of Pharaoh also saw her and commended her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. He treated Abram well for her sake. He had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female servants, female donkeys, and camels. But the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister? I might have taken her as my wife. Now therefore, here is your wife. Take her and go your way." So Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all that he had. Okay, so they found out anyway, right? I mean, plus he was mad. So anyway, that's 12. Let me see. I don't have anything from 12. Okay. All right, 13. Abram inherits Canaan. 13, here we go. Then Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, to the south. Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. And he went on his journey from the south as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made there at first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. Lot also, who went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. Now the land was not able to support them, that they might dwell together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. The Canaanites and the Perizzites then dwelt in the land. So Abram said to Lot, "Please let there be no strife between you and me, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are brethren. Is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If you take the left, then I will go to the right. Or if you go to the right, then I will go to the left." And Lot lifted his eyes and saw all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt as you go towards Zoar. So what happens is, Abraham ends up in Canaan, which is Israel, and Lot sees Jordan, and it's very green and well watered. So that looks like the choice piece of land. So he picks that. And Egypt, if you go far enough down, apparently part of it was kind of subtropical. If you look at the latitude zones, you'll see, now it's pretty dry. But back then, things were different. That's another story. I don't want to get into too many things here. But anyway, it was green. So he picks this. Only what happens is sometime a little after this, the story with Lot, Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, then Sodom and Gomorrah gets destroyed, and that becomes kind of a barren wasteland of desert then. In that case, Abraham is in the choice piece of prime real estate instead. So it's funny how these things go. But anyway, all right. Then Lot chose for himself all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated from each other. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent even as far as Sodom. But the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinful against the Lord. So, and the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, "Lift your eyes now and look upon the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. For all the land which you see, I give to you and your descendants forever. And I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if a man could number the dust of the earth, then your descendants also could be numbered. Arise, walk in the land through its length and its width, for I give it to you." Okay, so here we have the promise of the land. It's given to, him and his descendants. So now, then Abram moved his tent and went and dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built an altar there to the Lord. Now, this name, he dwells in this area for a while, this Hebron, and what's interesting is that's where you get the term Hebrews, okay, derived from Hebron. So, just a little historical note. Okay, now 14. And it came to pass in the days of, Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations, that they made war with Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. All these joined together in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him came and attacked the Rephaim in Ashtaroth, Karnaim, the Zuzim in Ham, the Emim in Shaveh, Kiriathaim, and the Horites in their mountain of Seir, as far as El Paran, which is by the wilderness. Okay, now I definitely need a trophy for getting through these tongue twisters that they throw at us. And I haven't practiced. I haven't even read this ahead of time. Then they turned back and came to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and attacked all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites who dwelt in Hazazon Tamar. And the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, went out and joined together in battle in the valley of Siddim against Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of nations, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar. 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of asphalt pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled. Some fell there, and the remainder fled to the mountains. Then they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their provisions and went their way. They also took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. Then one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, the Amorite brother of Eshcol and brother of Aner, and they were allies with Abram. Now when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his 318 trained servants who were born in his own house, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. He divided his forces against them by night, and he and his servants attacked them and pursued them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus. So he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his brother Lot and his goods, as well as the women and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shaveh, that is the king's valley, after his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him. Okay, so Lot gets kidnapped, and Abraham and his company rescue him back. And his possessions. That's that. If this is symbolic for something, I don't know. But this part definitely is here. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of God Most High. And he blessed him and said, "Blessed be Abram, blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him a tithe of all. Now the king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the persons and take the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have raised my hand to the Lord God Most High, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will take nothing from a thread to a sandal strap, and that I will not take anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich, except only what the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, let them take their portion. Okay, so now we have the part about Melchizedek. So he's a type because he's a king and a priest. And so it's somehow a type of Christ. Then you have the Last Supper symbolized here with the bread and the wine. So there's that aspect of it. And I'm not sure if he comes up again later, but it's mentioned in the book of Hebrews. So that's what it says. He's symbolic. Okay. It's a little vague, so the details of this I don't know a lot about. Okay, now 15. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward. But Abram said, Lord God, what will you give me, seeing I go childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus? Then Abram said, look, you have given me no offspring. Indeed, one born in my house is my heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, this one shall not be your heir, but one who will come from your own body shall be your heir. Then he brought him outside and said, look now toward heaven and count the stars, if you are able to number them. And he said to him, so shall your descendants be. And he believed in the Lord, and he accounted it to him for righteousness. Okay, this is quoted a lot in the New Testament. Faith is what's accounted to us for righteousness. So this is all over the place in the New Testament, and it's quoting this right here. Okay, then he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to inherit it. And he said, Lord God, how shall I know that I will inherit it? So he said to him, bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, and a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. Then he brought all these to him and cut them in two down the middle and placed each piece opposite the other. But he did not cut the birds in two. And when the vultures came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. Now when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and behold, horror and great darkness fell upon him. Then he said to Abram, know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in the land that is not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them 400 years. And also the nation whom they serve I will judge. Afterward they shall come out with great possessions. Now, as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. you shall be buried at a good old age. But in the fourth generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. Okay, so he's just somehow making him know this, and the prophecy that, first they'll go down to Egypt as slaves for 400 years, and then they come up into the land of Israel after this. And the time isn't ready yet. See, when they come in, the time was ready because the sin of the Amorites wasn't that bad yet, but at that time later it is. So God uses this as a judgment against them when he brings the Israelites, the Jews, the Hebrews, whatever, into the land of Israel. So it's all justified. And there are all kinds of people out there who argue about that, but they just didn't read it right, Anyway, and it came to pass, when the sun went down and it was dark, that behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a burning torch that passed between those pieces. On the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your descendants I have given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates, the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. Okay, so those were the people that lived in that land, and apparently the thing is they were promised more land than what they got, and that's because they didn't proceed to acquire it all in there when they entered, and this was to their own fault, but it's also, the whole thing is symbolic for, entering into the victorious Christian life. And many times people don't really enter in fully into that in a fully fleshed out way. They leave parts undone, so, at least for a while. So, at least for what's available, at the time, that's what they do. So, that's symbolic for that. But anyway, what's happening is that now they're wanting to take these things, and that's another issue, and I'm not getting into that stuff. I'm just reading it from what it says. Okay, so let me see over here. I talked about this. Okay, 16. Now, Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, see now, the Lord has restrained me from bearing children. Please go in to my maid, perhaps I shall obtain children by her. And Abram heeded the voice of Sarai. Then Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. So he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress became despised in her eyes. So here's where the trouble starts. Then Sarai said to Abram, my wrong be upon you. I gave my maid into your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, I became despised in her eyes. The Lord judged between you and me. So Abram said to Sarai, indeed your maid is in your hand. Do to her as you please. And when Sarai dealt harshly with her, she fled from her presence. Now the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, where have you come from, and where are you going? She said, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai. The angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand. Then the angel of the Lord said to her, I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. He shall be a wild man. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Okay, so here we get that prophecy. Now, just looking back at this, I mean, we see Sarah didn't do anything wrong. In fact, she was doing her a favor, Here, she was elevated from the level of just being a handmaiden to being a second wife of Abraham. And she would probably inherit something then. And she becomes pregnant and is going to have a child. So I would say that's a pretty good elevation, and she should have been thankful to Sarah. But instead, she gets obstinate and contemptuous and starts being, snippety. So, of course, Sarah is irritated by this and complains to Abraham. In all fairness, it's not his fault. He didn't do anything. He's just going along with what she said. I don't think he had a problem with it. But anyway, that's what happened. So he didn't know she would be like that, Hagar. So and the problem was with, Hagar, So he says that then you do what you want with her. Anyway, she treats her bad in return, which she probably was just responding to how she was behaving, and she just deserved it all. I mean, I wasn't there, but I know how these things go. Anyway, so she gets upset and leaves, and that wasn't really the plan. So the angel comes and says, no, go back there and submit to Sarah, like you were the naughty one. Just go and submit to her and don't be bad, right? So that's basically the message there. And she does. And here, there's this prophecy. Now, here's where we get that whole people group out of Ishmael. Out of Ishmael come most of the Arab nations, okay? And here we have the prophecy concerning them, which is also down to the nail correct, right? The wild man, and he'll have his hand against everyone, and vice versa. I mean, we see this being played out until this day, okay? So there's that. But Abraham, he tries a lot of things to get a son. I mean, I know he's going along with Sarah here, but, he tries it all, and this wasn't really the original plan, because it was like, what happens is Isaac comes along. So you get this whole thing. Well, I'll mention it more when we get there. So, okay. Then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, you are the God who sees, for she said, have I also here seen him who sees me? Therefore, the well was called Bir Lahairoi, observe it is between Kadesh and Bered, and that means well of the one who lives and sees me. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram named his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. So this was his first child here. Okay, I should probably start the next video because I'm going to do up until 21, I think it was. Maybe 22. Yeah, so I'll do that. I'll be right back.